Time to re-up YouTube. Your boy Mustard is back with another video, and we are here to talk about some MVP convo in the NBA and why some people are so mad about Nikola Jokic potentially winning not one, two, but 3 straight MVPs in a row. Regular season MVPs. Keep that in mind because we're going to get to that in a second. If you didn't see the All-Star draft, then I don't blame you because the All-Star game these days, they aren't that exciting. But if you didn't see, Nikola Jokic was drafted second to last right before Larry Markkinen among the starters, obviously. It was a pretty funny moment. Jokic saw that it was between him and Larry to be the last pick among the starters, and he just walked to LeBron and said, "Hey man, don't do me like that. Come on man, pick me." That was pretty funny. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I love Jokic, but that was pretty tough that he was about to be the last pick. Who knows? Maybe LeBron would have picked Larry. I really doubt it, but hey, who really knows, right? Nonetheless, though, with that, it sparked another conversation about if Jokic deserves this MVP award, which I feel like we've had this conversation each and every single time he's won an MVP. They did it the first time, the second time, and they're doing it again this year. And with that being said, I just want to talk about this award and why I think a lot of people have an issue with it and why they shouldn't, but I understand why. You feel me? There's a lot of hypocrisy around this award. But before we go any further, make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It seems like a lot of stuff, but it literally takes you less than 2 minutes. Go ahead and do that down below. And speaking of down below, in the description box down below, you'll see the link for my social media. The @ are on the screen: Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, all of that fun jazz. Make sure you go and follow me. But without further ado, let's get back to the subject of discussion and talk about Jokic maybe winning 3 straight MVPs, bruh. Now, before I get really deep into this convo, let me just start off by saying I do not hate Nikola Jokic. I just think that there are certain standards that are given to him that aren't given to other players in the NBA, good and bad for his case. And what I mean by that is when you look at the MVP award throughout NBA history, there's always been an underlying criteria but never a straightforward one because it can change from year to year. But for the most part, it's given to the best player on one of the top teams in either conference. They're putting up great numbers and they obviously have a huge impact on winning. Now, in certain years, there can be outliers, like we saw Russell Westbrook when he won the MVP as a 6th seed in the Western Conference, but he had the numbers and he also had a narrative on his side. Now, I don't think narrative really should matter in these conversations, and for the most part, I don't think it's like the biggest thing in these MVP convos, but it can help your case. In the case of Westbrook when he won in 2017 as a 6th seed in the West, which was an outlier season, not only was he averaging a triple-double for the first time since the 60s where Oscar Robertson did it only one time, it was something that we thought we'd never see again, and it came from a player who had just lost his co-star in KD and was seen as one of the most beloved stars in the league at the time, of course. Now, Westbrook would then go on to make the triple-double kind of like an everyday thing in the league, but at the end of the day, Russell Westbrook at the time, that was something that we thought it was never gonna happen again. Like, people always saw guys like LeBron, Jason Kidd put up good triple doubles here and there, and a lot of them in regular seasons. But Westbrook came along and made averaging a triple double a norm. He did it for 3 straight seasons. Then later in his career, after he didn't do it in Houston, he went to Washington and did it there. I mean, he truly made a triple-double clockwork in the NBA. And because of that, many people look back at his MVP season and say, yeah, it was great, but why did we give him the MVP over Harden, who was a 3rd seed in the West and was only like a couple of rebounds off from doing it himself? Now you insert somebody like Nikola Jokic, who, sure, he's averaging a triple-double this year, but I don't even think that that's the big deal of his season this year, because let's be real here. Yes, the triple-double is impressive, but he was slated to win even before he got to that triple-double mark a couple of weeks ago in the regular season. So I don't want to hear the triple-double being the reason why he's going to win. He won back-to-back in the past 2 years without even averaging a triple-double. So I don't think the triple-double is the big deciding factor for Nikola Jokic. But what I think a lot of people have an issue with when it comes to Nikola Jokic winning these MVPs MVPs is the lack of consistency when it comes to the player that they're going to pick to win this award. I mean, just think about it here. One season, Nikola Jokic wins as the 3rd seed and they tell Joel Embiid, hey man, you just didn't play enough games. Even though your Sixers are the 1 seed, you missed a huge chunk of the season and we can't just give it to you. And I thought that was fair. Availability is the best ability, so I have no problem with that whatsoever. But then the next year, Joel Embiid is still one of the top seeds in the Eastern Conference, and Nikola Jokic still wins the MVP as the 6th seed. And I like Jokic, but I always thought that was a problem. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate it, because at the end of the day, Jokic was putting up great numbers, and he was missing Jamal Murray and MPJ for most, if not all, of the season. So him being able to avoid the play-in scenario and leading them to a 6th seed, it was still MVP caliber play. But considering that he was coming off of an MVP the previous season, Joel Embiid was the runner-up, and he's the runner-up in this scenario, and Jokic has now fallen to a 6th seed, I would expect at least some voter fatigue to affect Jokic enough to the point that Joel Embiid wins, but unfortunately, that's not what happened. And hell, even Giannis, who had a great season last year, by the way, you could argue his best regular season to date, he didn't come in 2nd place either. He was 3rd. Jokic would win the MVP over 2 guys that were top seeds in their conference and still playing relatively at the same level as Nikola Jokic. So I understand why a lot of people looked at the award last year and said, you're changing the criteria again. First, it was about health and games played. Now Joel Embiid has that, Giannis has that, and they're losing to the same guy as he is the 6th seed in the Western Conference. It just seems unfair. You're moving the goalpost every single time. Now this year it's about, hey, Jokic is putting up better numbers than his MVP season the year prior. Well, no shit, he's doing that when he has more work to do on the team with players like Jamal Murray and MPJ missing all of the season. It doesn't mean that Jokic can't put up great numbers even when they're playing. I mean, we're seeing it this season. He's putting up incredible numbers, but if his numbers improve from a season where he did have those guys on the team, well, no shit, his numbers are gonna look better when they're not there. I love Jokic, but I do understand why people were upset seeing how they changed the criteria for him last year. It doesn't mean he didn't have an MVP caliber season, but you can't keep moving the goalpost for players that you like. I mean, think about it. When he won the MVP in 2021, let's not forget that not only Joel Embiid was 2nd, but Steph Curry was 3rd. And what was the argument used against him? Well, not only did your team miss the playoffs, even though it's a regular season award, but they weren't even a top 7 seed. They were the 8th seed in the Western Conference. If you can effectively damn near remove someone from the MVP convo because of seeding, why is this guy winning the conversation when he's the 6th seed? It just doesn't make sense. It's a lack of consistency there. And then that brings us to this season where Nikola Jokic is on pace to win his 3rd straight MVP. And what's crazy is they are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. It shouldn't even be controversial that he's gonna win another MVP, but the problem is the media's voting and the lack of consistency. I mean, think about it. Steve Nash was on one of the top teams in the Western Conference in 2007 with the Suns. He had better numbers than his previous MVP seasons in 05 and 06. You could argue the best season of his career, especially at that point in his career, and he still didn't win the MVP. He didn't even come close to winning the MVP because to them it's like, yo, we've given this guy back-to-back MVPs. We can't give him 3 straight. So instead of him winning, Dirk ended up winning the award, and rightfully so. His team was the 1 seed. Hell, you can look at Giannis when he won back-to-back MVPs. What did they say after he lost to the Heat? Oh, there's no way he's gonna win that MVP award next year. It doesn't matter what his numbers look like. He just won back-to-back MVPs and he lost in the playoffs, going out hella sad against the Raptors blowing a 2-0 lead and against the Heat losing to a 5 seed in the bubble in 5 games. We don't care if this guy averages 50 and 30. We're not giving him the MVP until he actually gets it done in the playoffs. That was the narrative about Giannis at the time, and he went out there and had a great year in 2021 and in 2022 last year, didn't win the MVP, didn't even finish as the runner-up for the award. And I honestly have no issue with that because it's been consistent with the past. We've seen numerous players from LeBron James to Michael Jordan win multiple MVPs, whether it's back-to-back or throughout a time period, and they just stop them and say, you know what, we can't give you any more because of voters fatigue. And unfortunately, neither of those unspoken rules that I just named apply to Jokic, unlike the other players of the past. Jokic has not even made it to the Western Conference Finals outside of a bubble dome in Orlando. In the MVP seasons he's had, he lost in the second round to the Phoenix Suns, being swept and playing like shit on defense, getting cooked and abused by D-Book and Chris Paul like target practice. And then the next year, in his second MVP campaign, he was gentleman swept by the Golden State Warriors, putting up great offensive numbers, but defensively he was atrocious. I mean, we're talking about Jordan Poole getting a max contract on top of his head. And sure, you guys can say the playoffs should bear no impact on whoever's gonna win the MVP, but unfortunately, we've seen in the past, we saw Giannis when he lost to the Heat. They were basically saying, we're not giving him another MVP. You keep selling in the playoffs in your MVP seasons. How can we keep giving you the MVP? At the end of the day, recency bias does affect a lot of players. You can look at James Harden. You telling me that his playoff flameouts didn't affect how some of these media members looked at him, especially when it came to some of these MVP convos? But then with Jokic, it's a different story. And the same thing applies when it comes to voter fatigue. It seems like they have none of that when it comes to Jokic. I mean, LeBron won back-to-back MVPs and was on pace to win his third one, but they said, nah, let's give it to D-Rose because we can't give it to LeBron. He just joined the Miami Heat. It's too much voter fatigue as well. We just gave him back-to-back MVPs, even though he had better numbers and was just clearly the best player in basketball, even in that regular season. So when people say they have an issue with Jokic winning 3 straight MVPs because they changed the criteria for players that they do like, I agree. I completely agree with that. Even if you think Jokic should win the MVP, you can't lie to yourself and say that they don't move the goalposts for him. Now, I have to also bring up the issue of race. I've been hearing that a lot over the last couple of weeks. If Nikola Jokic was black, they wouldn't be doing this. And look, I will say this, if you really do think about it, a lot of these media members for the most part are white men that did not make the NBA, probably didn't even play basketball growing up, or they just weren't good enough. They probably see themselves in Nikola Jokic a lot more than other players, and sure, Jokic is 7 feet tall, but he does not really have the body type of an NBA player, especially earlier on in his career. He was fat and out of shape. And when you throw in the fact that his analytics are just off the charts, and a lot of these media guys just focus in on analytics like Raptor or Vorp, I can understand people saying there's special treatment given to Jokic because of his race. And I'm gonna be honest, as a black man myself, during Black History Month, I really don't think his race is that big of an issue here. Honestly, I don't. Jokic is still a very talented player and one of the 5 best players in the league, hands down, no matter what. He has to still play at a certain level to even be in consideration for this award. How are we just making this all about race? I don't know. At the end of the day, the problem is the voting. There's no set criteria for these awards, and it can always get muddied up depending on who is voting for the player. One media member may value just strictly stats, another media member may value strictly winning, another media member may value how impactful you are on both sides of the ball. And I think that's the true issue with this award. You just have different people that value different things, and with no real criteria, there's nothing stopping any media member from changing their criteria on a year-to-year basis, especially when it's certain players that they may not even like that they have to go up against. Let's be real here. You think a lot of these media members like the fact that Joel Embiid flops a lot, or they like his personality? They may not like him at all. Jokic is more likable to some of these guys and more relatable than a guy like Joel Embiid. I think if people really want to fix this, the NBA just needs to set down a real criteria for the MVP award. If not, these conversations are always going to happen and they're never going to stop. But you guys, let me know your opinions down below in the comment section. Do you think that Jokic is unfairly treated in the NBA, positively or negatively, from fans, media members, players, former players, whoever it is in the basketball community? Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is your boy Young Mustard signing out. You guys stay safe and have a blessed day. Peace.